This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Christopher Mitchell, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Rune Scribble, Legendary Ray Ray, Kitsu the Kitsune, and Arctic Ace, and brought to you by 212th Trooper who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member, and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, you'll get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Now, before we get into today's story, I just want to ask you to do me a favor. Hit that like button since it tells YouTube you enjoy what I do, and check whether you're subscribed since only a quarter of my viewers are, and it's a free way to keep up to date with all my content. In return, I'll do all I can to keep making regular quality content for you. Thanks, and let's hop in. Meanwhile, deep in the mountains, the League of Villains retire to their hideout once more. Ever since Kamino, it seems as though everything has been against them. First Darby and All For One died, and then Kurogiri was taken into custody while they were unable to even make off with the Todoroki kid. To make matters worse, it seems like everyone but them has been reaping the rewards of their efforts, since with All Might dead, every 2-bit jobber who thinks he has what it takes to be a villain has come out of the woodwork, with a few even forming groups that think they can rival the League of Villains. Thankfully, most of them have been so pathetic, like the Creature Rejection Clan, that Shigaraki and his crew have been able to take them down when they've crossed paths, though even that's been a major drag, since now they need to contend with these small fries just to be noticed in the newly overcrowded villain market. Even when they'd tried to make alliances like with Overhaul and his Yakuza group, that had somehow gone south for them, since apparently Maskface had been doing some messed up experiments with some kid, with this drawing the ire of the heroes, who'd carted him off to Tartarus, while leaving his organization in shambles. In fact, the only reason the League itself is exempt from being considered in shambles is because a few of the smarter wannabe villains have started paying them tribute, having been inspired by Darby's sacrifice, as they call it, to kill All Might. Truthfully, Shigaraki doesn't like it any more than when the hero killer was hogging the spotlight. But whatever, he'll use it, even if it's yet to turn up a single recruit to replace the ones they've lost. In fact, in the weeks that follow, they receive no new members at all, since without Kurogiri to act as intermediary, Gigantomachia never emerges from dormancy to seek Shigaraki out, with this in turn meaning Dr. Garaki remains in the shadows, unwilling to support the destructive young man until he does something to prove himself, especially since at present, he has done nothing to put himself above the rank and file, and in fact made quite a fool of himself during his last public outing, where he was outsmarted and defeated by a quirkless foreigner who would have succeeded in capturing him too if All For One had not stepped in to save him. Frankly, he is a disappointment, who in Garaki's eyes should be cast aside, since he is not worthy of his master's legacy. Subsequently, the League remain adrift, with no grander purpose than to be one rat among many gnawing at the half-dead carcass of hero society. That is, until they receive a call from another of All For One's old allies, the tech and info broker Geren, though in actuality it is the man who captured him, Re-Destro, the supreme commander of the Meta Liberation Army. Unlike the other upstarts, his order dates back to the early days of Quirks, and has quietly been building influence and resources in accordance with the vision of its founder, the revolutionary villain Destro, in a manner quite similar to All For One, and this is why his successor, Redestro, has called to issue a challenge to the League and Shigaraki specifically, where the stakes will be nothing short of history itself, as the time has finally come to see whether it will be the legacy of the Demon Lord or the Quirk Liberator that shapes the new world they have found themselves in. At first, this is met with a scoff, as Shigaraki asks how stupid Re-Dumbass thinks he is, since this is obviously a trap, a claim Redestro does not refute, though he does reveal that he anticipated this reluctance, and so prepared two pieces of leverage. First, he has Geren, and if the League is to have any chance of standing out, they'll need him, so it would be in their best interest to come rescue the broker. And second, by taking this call, his satellites have zeroed in on the villains' locations, so if they don't come, he'll just give that data to the heroes who will have no problem throwing the lot of them into Tartarus. So really, they have no choice, and at least if they come to his celebration they can go down swinging, and be remembered as having helped legitimize the ascension of the Meta Liberation Army. Scowling that he hates this smug jerk, Shigaraki wastes no time in decaying the phone into dust, though, all the same, he does admit that it seems Re-Destro has them cornered, so they've got to go spring this trap. Begrudgingly, the rest of the League agree, with them descending from the mountains and down into Deku City, which had been Redestro's designated meeting place. However, when they arrive, the streets are almost entirely empty aside from a low-level pro-hero who leads them deeper into where a blue-skinned woman and handsome man are waiting, with the pair introducing themselves as Curious and Trumpet respectively. They then indicate a tower at the back of the city, explaining this is where Redestro as Geren though when Spinner rambunctiously claims they'll just go get him then, Curious cackles that she's afraid not, since to reach the tower, they'll have to make it past their legion of loyal soldiers, all of whom appear to be nothing more than civilians. That way, when this seemingly civilian group defeats the League of Villains, something even the pro-heroes have been unable to do, it will serve as proof that quirk regulations are detrimental to society, and so should be abolished. As if this was a pre-planned cue, hundreds of ordinary people start coming out of the woodwork, each of their faces alight with fanatical fervor. Then, when Trumpet nods, they attack. In contrast, the League are only 5 desperate people. They're refusing to go down without a fight. They form up to face this assault head-on, taking his position at the front since he can answer numbers with numbers. Twice is the first to move, summoning dozens of clones who swarm the street while their voices overlap in broken unity. Here their sheer insanity is a benefit, as with no concept of self-preservation they clash against the army and even manage to push them back through sheer weight, so that for a moment the League feel larger, stronger, like they might be an army too. Though this is only for a second, as with each broken bone the MLA ranks inflict, another twice clone dissolves into sludge, thinning the League's defenses while bolstering their fervor to keep attacking. Knowing they'll be overrun if they remain clumped together, the villains make the unanimous decision to scatter and reconvene at the tower, though this will be easier said than done, as they soon discover the force fighting Twice's clones are only the first wave, with more waiting around every corner to ambush them. As perhaps the most resolute League member, Spinner is the first to meet this challenge, refusing to run as he swings his blade in wide arcs while using his wall-crawling quirk to avoid jets of lightning and other quirk-based attacks from his enemies. In a testament to his tenacity, several MLA fighters fall to this unconventional fighting style, knocked unconscious or cut down by his wild swings. However, at the end of the day, he is little more than a man with a sword, so that as the fight drags on, his arms grow heavy, his legs and lungs burn from exhaustion, and finally a foe with a hammer quirk slams him in the back, throwing him across the street while his sword spins out of view. Seeing a chance to end things, the MLA fighters change tack as they attempt to dogpile the Lizard Man, though even unarmed and outnumbered, he does not give up, pushing off the ground with bloody palms and fighting until the massive hands holding him down become too much to resist, though at least no one can say he didn't try. Meanwhile, Compress fights with his usual flair, refusing to stifle his creativity even in a moment of crisis. To this end, he compresses chunks of rubble and hurls them like cannon fire, while reducing incoming attacks and attackers into marbles that he juggles in his gloved hands. Truly, he has turned the battlefield into his stage, forcing the MLA fighters to fall back or try to flank him, all the while he bows theatrically, his mask glinting while a smirk forms behind it. However, one who practices trickery should also beware of it, as when he spots what appears to be Toga and Spinner being overrun by enemies, his protective instincts towards the younger villains draw him over to help, though, as he will learn just a moment too late, these are actually puppets created by MLA Lieutenant Skeptic when they turn around and plunge their blades into Compress's stomach, taking him out of the fight. Over with Toga, she is engaged Curious like Canon, with the publisher being eager to interview her, since from the information Skeptic and Trumpet were able to uncover on her, she's the perfect poster child for why the MLA exists, a sweet girl forced to suppress her quirk by society, until it eventually drove her to madness and villainy. Honestly, she'd be a great spokesperson for their cause, but unfortunately she's just too unpredictable. Not to mention the whole blood angle might be a bit too icky for general audiences. Luckily, Curious's time in media management has taught her how to spin stuff like this, so if it's not too much to ask, she just needs Toga to die. That way, she goes from blood-sucking ghoul to tragic teen who died heartbreakingly young, because the systems in place did nothing to help her. Rather than be disturbed by the fact that Curious just told her to die, Toga laughs that she gets the desire to use their quirks freely, since she does too, but she can't turn her back on the League, since they were the first people that made her feel like she belongs, so she's gonna keep fighting for them and all the people she loves. With this, she goes on the attack, slashing several MLA foot soldiers and ingesting some of their blood, since if she can slip out of sight and transform into them, she can pass undetected and make it to the tower in no time. Or at least, that would be the case if not for Curious's quirk, Landmine, as by having touched each of her subordinates, she has converted them into bombs down to their very blood, which she then detonates inside Toga's mouth, throat, and stomach, dealing massive damage to the girl. Being more of a stealthy assassin than a frontline fighter, Toga next attempts to sneak away into one of the nearby houses, since if she can get the jump on the blue-skinned woman, she'll just take her out that way, though here too she is met with hurdles, specifically explosive ones. as having always intended to finish Toga off here, Curious had taken the time to touch pretty much everything in the neighborhood, giving her a near limitless supply of bombs. Such forethought puts the perpetually erratic Toga at a steep disadvantage, though this is not the only one she must contend with, since she also has less experience, both in combat and with her quirk, due to not needing to infiltrate the provisional licensing exam because the League had no interest in Izuku's blood, and never received the month and a half of combat practice against Gigantomachia. As a result, she is simply not able to achieve her quirk awakening, and without it, she cannot win this fight. Nonetheless, she keeps trying, all the while Curious's cameras flash overhead, claiming her story for the MLA. Then, when they have everything of use from her, a large group of goons descend upon the girl and detonate, with the heat of their explosion immolating her instantly, so that she dies an ironically bloodless death. And with that, the only League member left standing is Tomura Shigaraki, who is squaring off against the most offensively powerful MLA lieutenant, Geten, or to use his villain name, Iceman. Unfortunately for the tousle-haired leader, this is not a fair fight, since Geten's Ice-Ply quirk allows him to fly on platforms of ice that put him far outside the touch range of Shigaraki's decay. However, this is not to say that Shigaraki has nothing going for him, as every time Geten hurls an ice construct at him, he is able to decay it into nothing, reducing the damage to some minor freezer burn on the tips of his fingers. As a result, the pair are caught in something of a stalemate, since neither can do any lasting damage. Even Geten's attempts to create an ice storm and bombard the villain with ice from all sides is only somewhat effective, as having learned from his loss to Batman, Shigaraki's reflexes are quicker now, allowing him to touch most of the objects before they can land more than glancing blows. While this brings him no closer to victory, Shigaraki is nonetheless quick to taunt his foe about his failure, hoping that will drive him into a rage so he'll make a mistake. Though unfortunately, Geten remains soft-spoken and ice-cold, not even showing a flicker of emotion as his face is hidden by the hood of his snow jacket. However, it seems not everyone is satisfied with the glacial pace at which this battle is going, as having planned for the possibility that the League of Villain leader might require 2 MLA lieutenants to beat, Trumpet soon joins the fray, driving up in his campaign bus and using its microphone to trigger his own quirk, Incite. Through this, he is able to inspire and enrage, as he calls upon any who might be listening to help in the fight with Shigaraki, a call that several dozen foot soldiers are more than happy to answer. As one, the goons then attempt to form a human wave like they did against Spinner, though while that one was intended to hold the villain down, this seems to be more of a push, as Shigaraki must dig his heels in as the swarm attempt to shove him backwards. Unluckily for them, this also puts them in range of his decay, as he mercilessly lays his hands on any enemy he can reach, turning them to dust one after another. While normally this would be a demoralizing sight that would give the attackers pause, thanks to Trumpet's quirk, those who die do not even scream, instead glaring at the target until their eyes have been decayed, while those around them simply close ranks, or else shift positions so that new allies who hear Trumpet's call can join the push. Thanks to this apparent fearlessness and the seemingly endless supply of low-level scrubs to stand in his way, Shigaraki is unable to slow his enemies' progress as they continue moving him backwards. Though, to what end, he doesn't know. Maybe they're trying to knock him over, though surely there are better ways to do that than this, with neither Trumpet nor Geten giving any indication through their speech or actions. In fact, Geten has halted his assault entirely, probably to avoid hitting his own guys, instead simply watching him passively from above, with his only words being a soft-spoken admonishment to his own followers, as he reminds them that Shigaraki's no good to Re-Destro dead. This is definitely weird, though the villain has other things to worry about, as with the next push his back foot slips on something that almost makes him fall, and looking back, he sees that Geten has frozen a patch of the road, with this presumably being what the minions have been pushing him towards. Seeing that their goal is in sight, the mob give one last shove, and with one of his feet on a slippery surface, Shigaraki can do nothing to resist, as he slides into the center of the ice circle. Then, before he can react, Geten makes a fist. At once, a sharp crack rings through the city block, as the frozen road and pipe beneath it split, causing a geyser of water to burst up and submerge Shigaraki. As water is not a single object, it is immune to the effects of decay. Though defiant to the last, he still raises his hands and opens his mouth in a wide scream, as Geten freezes the geyser, and by extension him, solid. For a moment, the ice sculpture that was once Tomura Shigaraki stands tall, still trapped in that snapshot of rage and refusal to submit, though as the weight of its solid back outweighs the young man protruding from the front, it falls backwards with a heavy clang. Once more, this is initially met by silence, until Trumpet is unable to help himself, and smirks that he told Geten it was worth seeding this part of the water main with a carbon suspension. Mildly, the hooded man agrees that his compatriot was right, since that will make the ice block significantly more sturdy and resistant to melting. Then, as he descends from his floating platform and allows his shining eyes to fall dispassionately over the frozen figure, he instructs his subordinates to come on, since it's time they bring Re-Destro his prize. Though, they are not the only ones with this objective in mind, as one by one the surviving members of the League of Villains are brought to the plaza outside Redestro's tower. First is Spinner, bound in chains, his head hung low as he is placed on his knees, or not long after, Compress is carried in on a stretcher, his once pristine mask cracked to reveal much of his face, and his bandaged knife wounds exposed for all the world to see. And finally, there is Twice, unmasked and panicking as a string of fractured, often contradictory phrases tumble from his mouth. All the while, a pair of skeptic puppets bearing his own face hold him under each arm and drag him forward. Upon their arrival, each of the vanquished villains is placed before the Supreme Commander himself, whose jovial smile and immaculate suit stand in stark contrast to Toga's burned body and Shigaraki's frozen form, which have been strategically positioned behind him. When they are all in place, Redestro finally speaks, his voice like that of an unctuous salesman, as he asks why all the long faces, since the three of them are the real winners. After all, they made it to the tower just like they wanted to, and better still, now they've been liberated from the chaos of their little league and the lies of All for One. So come on, why not give him a smile? Just a little one. Now. With this final command, faint splotches begin to blossom on his face, though spotting Curious's subtle signal, he stops and takes a deep breath, so that when he next speaks, his complexion and composure are flawless once again. He then looks upon his captives, not as a collective, but as individuals, with his eyes first falling on Twice, since his babbling and twitching has started to annoy him as it distracts from his speech. Nonetheless, he remains calm as he lays a hand on the broken man's cheek, that salesman's smile still on his face, while in a faux concerned tone, he sighs that he can see the pain and loss in poor Jin's eyes, though perhaps he can help him feel whole again with this. On these words, Trumpet strides forward, his steps measured, almost practiced, as if hitting his mark in a play, while in his hands rests a silver platter carrying Twice's mask, clean and perfectly folded. Gently, as if not to startle a child or a particularly skittish animal, Redestro then offers the mask to the man, assuring him that it's alright, and that he brought it here for him if he'd like it. In his fractured state, Twice does not answer, though his actions speak loudly enough, as he desperately snatches it up with trembling hands and pulls it on, all the while his chest heaves like a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. As this happens, Redestro's eyes never leave the other man's face, with the only thing that changes being his smile. It is broader now, and more condescending, like he has just observed a pet performing a mildly amusing trick. Next, Redestro's eyes fall upon Spinner, with the Supreme Commander taking a knee in front of him, as he states that he must forgive him for the chains. He has no desire to parade him around like some beast as the ignorant society have before. No, what he wants is to honor him, and all his heteromorph brethren, who have been blessed with the gift of an ever-present quirk, to raise them up. But to do this, he needs a champion of liberation to carry that torch and light the way. As he says this, he begins meticulously unlocking each binding, so that Curious's cameras can clearly see, and every clattering lock hitting the pavement acts as punctuation to his words. When he is done, he offers Spinner his hand to help him stand, though for a moment, the lizard man does not respond, his head still bowed while his clawed hands twitch. Then, as something like resolve, or perhaps resignation hardens his expression, he takes the proffered hand and rises to his feet in front of the Supreme Commander, his eyes no longer on the ground, but now straight ahead, while all around him the cameras flash. Now all that remains is Compress, though unlike his peers, he refuses to allow Re-Destro to claim the spotlight, instead choosing to speak first as he tilts his cracked mask towards the cameras and questions what honeyed words the balding charlatan intends to weave for him, since he must be a fool if he believes he can trick a trickster. Surprisingly, this does not elicit anger or rebuke, with the Supreme Commander simply smiling indulgently, as though he'd been waiting for this exact flourish. After all, Curious had warned him Compress's pride would demand the jab, but in the end, that same pride will be what drives his submission. Chuckling in an affectation of lightness to show that the masked villain's words can't faze him, Redestro adopts a breezy, paternal tone as he states that he'll forgive the crack about his hairline, but only because he feels a sense of kinship with Compress, and from what the other man has said, he sees it too. They both bear the weight of lineage, him from his forebear Destro, and Compress from his grandfather Peerless Thief, two men who were wrongly called villains because they dared to expose the hypocrisy of hero society. In truth, they were comrades in arms separated by time, whose shared legacy that same society has tried and failed to eradicate. But now the time has come to vindicate those two great men, and show the world that they were bastions of liberation, and heroes in the truest sense. What does Compress say to that? Letting out a low, hollow laugh that contrasts Re-Destro's breezy chuckle, the masked man calls this well said, sardonically admitting that he would applaud if he didn't fear it might reopen his wounds. Very well, if Re-Destro wishes to have him stand in for his grandfather and play a part in his crusade, he will not decline the role of villain that he has held thus far, though here the Supreme Commander stops him, as he will not even allow this modicum of self-determination, instead shaking his head like a mildly disappointed teacher, before wondering aloud if Compress has been listening at all. They are not villains any more than their ancestors were. That is a false narrative written by this hero society, and one which Compress has sadly internalized. However, when their crusade is done, the annals of history will remember them not as villains, but as heroes of liberation. When this is met with no rebuttal, Redestro smiles, and for once, it carries the air of genuineness. Three formerly proud villains now stand broken and bound to his cause, their individual humiliations and subsequent submissions serving as a testament to his power. Twice hides behind his mask, trembling but obedient. Spinner stands tall, his eyes fixed ahead as the cameras capture his supposed rebirth, and Compress lies battered, playing the part of the jester, even as his words are co-opted into the MLA's creed. And behind them, Toga's charred body and Shigaraki's frozen form remain on display as grim trophies of conquest and silent reminders of what happens to those who resist. With these images cemented in place, the leadership of the Meta Liberation Army declare their victory absolute. The League of Villains, once feared as the agents of chaos, have been conquered, and the best among them have been brought into the fold of liberation by its magnanimous leader. As if on cue, Redestro rises before his people, his immaculate suit unmarred by battle, while spreading his arms wide as if to embrace the plaza itself. When he speaks, his voice carries not just to the soldiers in the square, but to the countless cameras transmitting his words as he proclaims that their rivals are gone. The petty anarchists, the legacy of All for One, the chaos of Shigaraki, all have been extinguished or remade. Now, only one enemy remains, the rotten heart of hero society itself. Therefore, the time has come for their liberation to take its rightful place on the world stage. Their creed demands that no quirk be shackled, but the heroes have built their regime out of chains, and the greatest symbol of those chains looms over them all from the edge of the sea. Tartarus. To break it open will be to shatter the lie of hero society, and unleash a tide of power that the weak and cowardly have held in bondage for far too long. As the crowd roars its approval and fervor, Curious's drones sweep overhead, capturing every angle, the corpses of the fallen, the shattered villains now paraded as converts, and the Supreme Commander basking in adulation. This footage will be edited, packaged, and broadcasted until no citizen can ignore the message. The age of heroes is over. The age of liberation has begun. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.